Hi guys, Jenny with On Fire Fit, and welcome to another episode of High Heel Hallelujah. Today I am doing a Q&A, but first, let's look at the shoes. Okay, so today I am wearing a pair of Louboutin, and I have these beautiful hosiery on as well. It's a Cuban heel with a back seam, and there's a reason for all of it, of course, but I thought we should at least get a good look at the shoes. I will do extra footage for my Patreon family that will be addressed as well in the Q&A. And I will do a runway walk at the end, but this is a gorgeous pair of Louboutins that my husband gave me. And so definitely a little tie-in to the whole message and the Q&A today. I get a lot of questions, and sometimes they are questions that come to me repeatedly, and then sometimes I get a question that is kind of new and different. But I thought that it would be a good idea to do a Q&A. Some of the answers to these questions I have put into other video content, but I always have new people that come to visit me, and I always have kind of a diverse audience. So I do like to sometimes address some of the questions. I tend to be the type of person who would rather just talk through things. And I think it's great when people can get an understanding about things. We don't all have to think the same thing. We don't all have to have the same preferences. And in life, we're all going to take and leave what we want. And so if you are here to stay, welcome and thank you for staying. And if you are here just to visit and then move on, then I bless you as you go on. I know that I cannot please and will not please everybody. There's always going to be people from different camps of different thinking and thoughts and desires and hopes and love and passions and everything else under the sun. And so we gravitate toward the things that naturally seem to jive with that. But, you know, that's part of life. And so I just thought, let's do a little Q&A. I'll be very forthright about my answers, and maybe that'll shed some light on more about me and maybe more about you, because really that's what it's ultimately about. Your own personal life, your own personal journey, what you choose to have in your scope of reference, of growth, of joy, of peace, of love, everything. You get to choose that. So if I fit in that, great. And if I don't, then, you know, I'm happy to have known you for the moment that we've been here. So I'm going to start with one of the most pressing questions that I actually addressed on my Patreon channel. And that is, do I dangle on purpose or is it on accident? Now, you noticed that I just moved into position here, and this happened accidentally. Some people want it to be intentional, and some people want it to be accidental. And I know that there's different ways of thinking about that. I have found in my life that I have peace and purpose when I have a focus. And when my focus is all over the place, I tend to not have peace inside. So for me, and this is very simplistic perhaps, but for me, if my focus were on trying to dangle a shoe in a video, because some people are fascinated by that. Maybe it's sort of like I used to play piano, and there's that metronome that goes click, 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 and it's kind of mesmerizing, right? And so maybe for some people it's just sort of mesmerizing. I think some people just think it looks beautiful. Whatever the case is for you, I don't do it on purpose. And the main reason is because my focus is so much on my message and what I am here for, what my reason is for even being on social media. And there are people out there that specifically make videos where they do those things, and that's their thing, and that's their maybe purpose or their focus or whatever. And it just isn't mine. So if it happens naturally, then I'm not going to try to edit it out and fix it or anything like that. I think it's natural. I think that when we're out and about in normal life, when I'm at work, if I have on high heels, you better believe my heel is falling out of my shoe often. It just, it's part of natural life. Also, I've noticed that depending on the type of shoe, that will happen naturally. Also, if I have on hosiery, because there's just a little less of the friction of the natural skin, that will cause it to slip off my heel. I'm sure some people don't like me analyzing this, but I think it's a legitimate question that some people have had for me. And I feel like, what's the big deal about talking about it? I don't know. I mean, if you think it's mesmerizing, or you think that there's something about it that is pretty, okay, what's wrong with that? I have this general repetitive theme that I go back to quite often, and that is hyper-focus. So to me, the only disruption or problem with that is if it creates hyper-focus for you in your life, and that doesn't just go for this subject in particular. It could be anything. For example, years ago, I was hyper-focused on exercise, and I would do it no matter what. Part of it was, it does make me feel better. It makes my whole digestive system work better, but it could, and it did, work against me in a lot of situations where I was hyper-focused on that, to the point where even when I was sick, I would go and work out, and really, I should be listening to my body and resting, but my hyper focus took me into unhealthy directions. So I think that any area of our life where we start to hyper focus and not keep it in the boundaries of what is healthy, then it can create a problem. So it's the same to me in this regard. I do have a friend who loves high heels, and has naturally, through the process of kind of looking at that about himself and understanding that there's nothing wrong with thinking that high heels are beautiful or whatever, but if it takes up hours of time, you're looking at this or you're looking at that, and you're finding your focus is to be so hyper-focused. What he told me, I thought was really interesting, is it started to make him feel hollow. And I believe that's true of anything that we hyper focus on. It does not fill, it does momentarily, it does fill that little void or spot inside of you temporarily, which is why you do it again. You repeat it again. It's why I exercised like a maniac, because it did fill that hole for a moment, but it still left me hollow, which is interesting. And so that you may not even have any clue what I'm talking about when it comes to a dangling shoe. I have friends who are like, I didn't even know that was a thing. Like, I didn't realize people thought about that sort of thing. And I'm like, yeah, but there's probably something that you hyper focus on. So we all have areas that we have hyper focused on in the past, or we do now. And perhaps we can each take that for our own analysis and not judge somebody else and say, well, that's weird that they think that way. How about we look at our own lives and see where we may be doing that? And a lot of times it's more subtle, and that is even more dangerous. There are some people that are super hyper focused on a religious rule or regulation to the point where they do not act in love toward people. And that is actually even more dangerous to me than thinking a dangling shoe is beautiful. Primarily because I feel like they feel pretty good about themselves. They feel very justified. And it says in the Bible, we can have all these wonderful gifts and understandings, but if we don't have love, we are nothing but a bunch of noise. And so if we are hyper focused on something that is other than God's way, God's plan, God's way of loving people, we can sort of subtly be hyper focusing on things that are very destructive and will not lead people into God's love. And I know this is going pretty deep, but I do have a pretty diverse audience, and I have a friend who told me that I am sort of the middle between all of this, because I grew up and have a very strong connection with God and faith and, gone to church my whole life, but I also have my love of high heels. My husband provided all of these for me, along with a few of you that have sent me shoes for shoe review. But I'm sort of in this middle ground where I have a very diverse group of people. So there may be people that are coming from a love of high heels, or they think feet are pretty, or foot fetish, whatever. I also have a lot of my faithful followers here, and I think that we can all take this message to heart without shunning each other. So sometimes people from the world that is maybe has felt a lot of shame sometimes shames the other side, saying, you shouldn't be following Jesus because you XYZ, and they've had a bad experience with church or whatever. So I think from both sides, we have to be very careful to look at ourselves, look at our own hyper focus, and then help ourselves deal with that, but then act in love toward other people instead of in judgment. What a great, and I could go on and on, long topic that started off with a dangling heel. I love it. So anyway, that's one of the questions. So non-intentional, accidental, but I think it's kind of fascinating actually that you can keep a shoe on your foot like that. And I feel like I don't really think about it. Part of it is probably just because I've done it for so long and so many years of life that you just don't even realize it. But anyway, I think that's kind of interesting. Another question that I have had is if my husband has a foot fetish or a high heel fetish. And I have addressed this in other videos, but again, it's a great topic. I have a very interesting, my mom watches my videos. I have people from my church that come up to me. And in fact, just the other day, one of my friends at church was like, oh my gosh, I have heels that I can't wear anymore. And even heels that I bought that I never was able to wear because of some different foot issues. And, I know that you have a shoe closet too. And I'm thinking, I should pass them on to you. And so I love it. And I have my other friend who will, as she approaches me, she's like, but first, look at my shoes, and I love that. I feel like, what a beautiful way to connect to people and have so much joy over something simple. But to answer that question, no, he does not. And I, as I've said in multiple videos, so I'm sorry for those of you who have heard this multiple times, but my husband loves to love me. He loves to find ways to show his love for me. One of his love languages that he exhibits, not maybe so much how he feels loved, but how he gives love, is through gift giving. And he is a very good gift giver. He pays very close attention to what things people like, what sort of things bring them joy, and then he goes to the top. Even for my my friends and family and stuff, he knows how to pick out a good gift. Well, many years ago, when we first started dating and then got married, he knew that I loved heels. I love how heels just make an outfit. I don't have to go into the dressing room, and I tend to be kind of an efficient shopper. I'm not a good stroller and just kind of, so trying on clothes just seems to slow down my day in life too much. So I'm not the best at clothes shopping, but shoes was always like, oh, let me just try these on really quick. And I just always love how a shoe can transform an outfit. And so he caught on to that early. And therefore, we have this. And, of course, then when we moved into this home, he was like, well, you have to have your shoe closet. And when we started to build it and realized that there were too many shoes for the amount of shelves that they had designated, even though I went over it very closely with the designer, he gave up his side of the closet so that I would actually have room for clothing in addition to all these shoes. So he is a very giving, loving man. And if I've said this before, if my thing was peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, well, he would have one made for me every single day, and it would be waiting for me, when I got up in the morning or whatever. And so his thing is to love me. And so both of us have this same philosophy of life, that we love to enjoy things that God has blessed us with, but these are not the be all end all. I could give these away. Sometimes I have half a notion just to auction everything off and give all the money to charity. But for now, I see these as gifts of love. I am blessed that I have been given these opportunities to enjoy these gifts. But if there comes a time that is where I feel I'm led, then that's what we'll do, because it's not something that I need in order to feel good about myself or to, I don't know, do whatever I need to do for my day. Yes, high heels do just give you a different sort of lift, but it's so much more than that. It's so much deeper to have, for me, to have the Lord and his love that just is my stronghold and my everything. And so these are sort of just a frame around that, but that's the way that we both see it. So my husband and I have a similar philosophy on that. I have a lot of questions about Patreon, and not so much why I started it, but what kind of content is on my Patreon. And I've talked about this before, so again, it will be another rehash, but when I first stepped into the On Fire Fit arena, and the whole backstory to that really had to do with helping people remove shame from their lives, because there's a lot of shame wrapped around, especially for the women in my life, there's a lot of shame wrapped around their position in life. Not only just feeling overweight or out of shape or whatever, but that all worked into their mind and created a sort of a paralyzing demeanor in a way. And it affects so many areas of life. And I noticed it with the charity that I support in India with the women there. They had grown up in a very poor situation, but had a lot of shame wrapped around it, mainly society-wise. Now, in my life, I teach ballet classes and stuff. And so I've seen some of that similar parallel with women here that have a lot, but still with similar kind of feelings of unworthiness and shame and things. Then, as I really got into social media, I noticed how much that was a part of men and men's existence. And we've done a terrible job of advancing women and not smashing men down in the meantime. I really don't like the direction of things and the way that they have gone in society, where women want to bash men in order to say that they are above or superior or don't need men. I think that's ridiculous. If we were made in God's image and God made man and woman, why do we need to bash anybody? Women don't need to bash women. Women don't need to bash men, vice versa. There's a lot of benefits that have come about through the process of women being more liberated, but we've also done a really bad job of thinking that part of that process was to make men unnecessary. And that is absolutely ridiculous. It's a part of the breakdown of the family, the foundation of the country, the world, and everything else. You will never improve society by making people feel full of shame, unnecessary, or beaten down. It doesn't work. It does not work ever. And we have seen that over and over again, but somehow that still keeps happening. So in my On Fire Fit journey, I've started off with a lot of more physical fitness, which has helped us start to feel better physically about ourselves. But a lot of my messages of faith are all about the spiritual and mental and psychological journey of things. But it's started to encompass different groups of people too as I've gone through. And I love that. I embrace that. And God has taken me on this journey. And I have learned more and more and more about people and about myself through all of it. And so what has happened over these years, I started around 2015 with writing faith messages. I was teaching my ballet classes long before that. But when social media really started to amp up, I really have probably about since 2015. As I've gotten to this point in my life, I have accepted a lot more about the life that I have that includes all these beautiful things, that God made me with a certain type of foot that people say is unique. And I don't need to hide that. I don't need to be ashamed of that. It's not my hyper focus, but I'm not trying to hide it. And so a lot of the stuff that I am doing in social media is just to promote message of love and hope and joy. But as I was also coming up against censorship and some odd things that were happening out there in the world, where lots of judgment and things like that, I thought, why not have a private space where I can still be me? I am not going to go off the rails and be something totally different. I am still consistent with what you see here. You just see more of it. I have some more personal things going on with live stream. I hang out with you guys. My goal is to connect deeper with people, and it's more casual conversations that I can have, especially on the live streams. My YouTube video, extra content, is, more close-ups of the high heels and the runways and things like that. And then my live streams have a lot more casual interaction and talking, and it's a fun time. I don't have people that just pop in to be rude, negative, or vulgar. I have people there who are actually kind and I would consider to be friends. I have people that are still learning their own journey. They may not even think like me, but it has been a blessing because it gives us a space that's a little bit more protected. And unfortunately, the way that the world is going, there is a lot of other stuff that you kind of have to deal with when everything is out there public. So my Patreon is the main purpose of my Patreon is to connect deeper with people that are already in my social media life. And that may or may not fit with you. Some people come for other reasons and they leave. And that's okay, because I realize if I compromise who I am and what my goals are and my purpose and my vision and what I feel God has put in my heart, then I'm the one that's going to get hurt by it. It's not going to hurt other people. It's going to hurt me. And I have to protect that. I have to protect my own personal boundaries, my family, and I will do anything for that. So if God says, this is how the best way is to live, this is called choosing wisdom, and I say, well, never mind, I don't want to do that because I want more numbers or I want money, then I get what comes with that. I get the compromise and the pain and the feeling of not doing what I feel is best, because there becomes a dissonance within yourself when you know what to do and you're not doing it. So my hope is to know what I'm supposed to do it, and then the right people attract, and then the people that are not attracted to that, they move on. And that is absolutely fine. I don't have any hard feelings against those people because that is not maybe their part of their journey in their life. And so that's fine. But if you come, you can expect that it's just more of what you already see, but hopefully on a little bit more personal level. And so that's Patreon. I have been so blessed that I'm able to donate to charities more so than I was prior. And that was the other benefit that I really wanted to get out of this, was to be able to do more good in the world. And my Patreon family is allowing me to do that. And so I don't know, that brings me to tears almost, because I just feel so blessed by that. But the good thing too is that we do have seasons in life, and this is a season for Patreon and all of that. Maybe there's a season that will evolve into other things, and that's great. I have to keep those open hands that just say, okay, this is the time for this, and I have the time, I'm making the time, and I'm being blessed by the time, and it may move on out and in a new direction, and I'm not going to cling onto something that is not feeding my soul or yours. And that brings us to the next question. Why don't you show your soul more? Okay, I hear that quite a bit. And I did not grow up or have any experience in the foot fetish realm before. What I've come to find out that people have different preferences. Some people that like feet like toes, some like arches, some like soles, some like heels, some like just the anatomy of the natural foot. Did I say arch? Anyway, and so some people really like the sole of someone's foot. And I mean, that's kind of an interesting little metaphor anyway. And a lot of you know that I have been blessed to be a guest on the Soul to Soul podcast. And of course, the play on words, S-O-L-E and S-O-U-L, and I might be getting those reversed. Was it here to here or here to here? Anyway, I love that our soul is almost undefinable, but it's something that makes us uniquely who we are. It's our mind, our will, our emotions. It's that intangible thing that we just, it's just amazing. But when you see into somebody's soul and you see them for who they are, which is what my friend, the original photographer, does when he interviews and talks to people, is looking at them from their point of view and in their life. And I think that's a beautiful thing. But the question comes up from time to time, why don't you show your soul more? Well, I am not trying not to, and I'm not trying to, because again, it goes back to my focus. I have lots of videos, primarily exercise related videos, where the sole of my foot is showing, and I'm not trying to hide it. I don't ever change the camera angle to avoid it or any of that kind of stuff. But for me, my artistic way of putting myself out there and the things that I see when I'm, thinking in my head what picture to have taken of me or a picture that I am going to take. If the soul is in there, great. But I don't revolve things around trying to do that. And that may disappoint some people, but there are plenty of options out there where people put their soul straight up to the camera, or they purposely have it set up so that that is what you see. And that's for them. That's for those artists. That's for those people that like that, whatever. I'm just doing what I do. And so if it's there, great. If it's not, great. I just have a different focus. So I hope that makes sense. I know that I've had conversations with people over time about their preferences, and there's different points of view on all of that. And I have kind of processed through that over time and really gotten to where I'm comfortable with how I present myself. And if people don't like it, then go find another option. You are more than welcome to, move on and find what you want somewhere else. Maybe you came here because you liked high heels, or you thought that I had nice looking feet or something. And maybe you stayed because I was talking about something else that kind of took you deeper, or maybe there was some kind of light that came to you through this. I mean, in my opinion, that is the light of Christ in me, because I don't do things in my own strength. I do them only through Him. But maybe you're here for a different reason. Maybe you stumbled upon me for one reason, and maybe you've stayed for another reason. And maybe there are other people out there in the world that have the artistic things that you're looking for. And maybe I'm here mainly for the conversation. I don't know. We're all different. We all have a different point in our lives where we are, and I respect that. And so I don't know, just give that some thought. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. It doesn't have to be, she can only do this or I won't be there. You can only do that or I won't be there. I've told you a million times, every time I post a video with bare legs, people tell me I should be wearing nylons. Every time I wear nylons, somebody tells me I should be wearing bare legs. People want flats, they want heels, they want mules, they want whatever. There's a gamut of things. And I do what makes sense for me. I do a conglomeration of things because I have a conglomeration of things and I'm made up of a conglomeration of things. Maybe that's what we need to name this. What a word. But I think that when we learn to love and respect each other for who we are and the point we are in our journey, then those are those divine connections that I treasure. And I have been so blessed and fortunate to have developed relationships with people through social media that I would never in a million years have had otherwise. So I love to highlight the positives of social media, and as much as possible, ignore or keep in boundaries all the things that are the negatives. And that brings me joy, and it helps me to continue to fulfill my purpose. I'm sure I'm going to need to do another question and answer. If you have certain questions, you can definitely send me a message about it. But I think that should suffice for today. Let's take a walk on the runway. I will do a little extra footage for my Patreon family. So if you're not already with me over there and you want to join me, there's a link in the comments below. But let's say a prayer. Father God, thank you for this time together, and thank you for all the people that you have brought here. I pray for our minds to be open in love toward one another, and that we would respect each other in the journey that we're on, and that we would look into ourselves for the things that really need refining so that we love people better. Thank you for bringing these people to me, and I just pray that you would remove any shame, guilt, and then direct them with your light. Bring light into their lives and push out the darkness. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, so I will do a little close-up for Patreon, but then we'll do the runway.